At the moment, our country is more unsettled, more divided than I can ever recall. Because our future direction is unknown, supporters and opponents of the European Union are still arguing over principles, while practical preparations make little progress. Ministers assure us they're moving towards a deal. The European Union tell us they are not, because no new or viable proposals have been put forward by the British government. The Prime Minister tells us that he wishes to have a deal with Europe, but we don't see him sitting down in Brussels hammering out an agreement. Instead, we see him wrestling with bulls in Scotland, inspecting eggs in Wales, arguing with the public in high streets for all the world as though an election campaign was already in full swing. We see him denying his visit to a hospital is a photo opportunity because, and I quote, "there are no reporters or cameras present." Oddly, at that moment, those non-existent cameras were streaming pictures of him onto our television screens while photographers crowded the corridor. It is difficult to know what to say about such contradictions, but more serious disparities are at hand. Ministers tell us with a straight face, we obey the law, while the Prime Minister insists we will leave the European Union on the 31st of October, even though an Act of Parliament has been passed forbidding that to happen without a deal. And I will return to this later, for I may be able to explain this conundrum. Lip service is paid by ministers to the unanimous judgment of the Supreme Court, a unanimous judgment that it was unlawful to prorogue Parliament for 5 weeks, whilst at the same time the Prime Minister tells us the court was wrong and he was right. That is the cry of those found guilty of misdemeanours throughout the ages. Meanwhile, ministers continue to offer fantasy outcomes of what a post-Brexit future holds for people in every corner of our United Kingdom. Even at this late stage, if some deal is cobbled together with the European Union, it is likely to be both flimsy and partial. But as day succeeds day, it seems more likely, not certain, but more probable, that we will end up leaving the European Union without any deal at all. Last night, the Prime Minister willfully destroyed any hope of cross-party agreement in the House of Commons. Now, of course, in any circumstances, we will still have to reach an agreement with our European partners about our future relationship. But without an early deal, we will do it in a far more hostile environment. And the price of such a negotiating failure will be widespread and will affect rich and poor alike, but with one difference: the poor will be far less able to protect themselves. I don't wish yet again this evening to focus on the short-term chaos of a no-deal Brexit, nor on the sour atmosphere a no-deal outcome would create, nor on the economic cost of abandoning so much that has given us prosperity over so long, nor on the myriad difficulties business and individuals will face, nor on the disbelief at our folly of so many of our long-term friends and allies in every part of the world. What I do wish to focus on is the impact of our leaving without a good deal and the effect that will have on our country, our citizens, and our future. Far more is at stake than simply our relationship with the European Union. At stake also is our relationship with the wider world. And because of the nature of the Brexit debate, very probably the future of our domestic politics as well. I don't believe, after the schism that Brexit has created, that we will be able to return to the status quo ante. The government constantly tells us that everyone is fed up with Brexit. So am I. They tell us everybody wants an end to Brexit. So do I. But no one should believe that Brexit will end on the day we leave, whether that is the 31st of October or sometime beyond. Far from it. The impact of Brexit, both internally and externally, will be felt negatively for a very long time. From the outset, the government's whole negotiating strategy, if such it can be called, has been driven by a desire to win the support of the anti-European hard right of the Conservative Party, together with like-minded media. It was always likely to be a fruitless task. The Brexiteers were utterly hardline on the subject of Europe, always committed to Brexit at any and all cost, and were an unpersuadable audience. Uninterested, unwilling to compromise, and as is now only too clear, dismally unprepared to abandon their fond simplicities for the realities of our modern world. They were appeased too much for too long and by too many. But they held to their convictions and spread them, often without reason and beyond scruple. Their opposition has made a deal almost impossible to obtain and to achieve the approval of the House of Commons. But we still need to reach an agreement with our partners. But if the government is to get a deal, if the House of Commons is to approve it, if the scars of Brexit are to be diminished, then there must be compromise in the negotiations. And not only compromise, but understanding. Understanding from both sets of negotiators. Little of that has been forthcoming. British Brexiteers promised the earth and misled themselves and, worse, the nation. But they failed to understand the concerns of the European Union, or even, it seems to me, the very basics of negotiation. But it's equally fair to point out that the European Union have failed to take account of what the European Union itself will lose when Britain departs. And that is a great deal. They lose the second largest economy, one of only two nations with a nuclear capacity and a military capability. They lose the long reach of British foreign policy, perhaps unequalled elsewhere in Europe. And they lose overt access to our intelligence, counter-terrorist and policing expertise. These losses are serious for both sides in this negotiation. Diminishing British access to the Galileo navigation system or Europol or the European arrest warrants was a petty and short-sighted approach. The European Union needs to understand that diminishing the United Kingdom will inevitably diminish the European Union as well. The effect of Brexit may leave a long-term impact on our politics and our political system. Both our main political parties are in disarray, split fundamentally over the European question and the future direction of policy. At present, certainly over recent days, there has been much talk of an early general election. In the present atmosphere, it would be likely to become the most unsavoury election of modern times. All parties profess to believe an election is necessary to clear the air. I disagree. Until Brexit is resolved, a general election would solve nothing. It would merely fuel the current feeling of disillusionment and disunity over our politics. Far from healing the nation, it would scratch away at open wounds. It may also be pointless, as the most likely outcome, it seems to me, is yet another fragmented parliament, but one even more bitterly divided than it is at the moment. So that raises a question. Why is our government so keen to put our country through that? There may be a practical calculation behind their thinking. They believe the Labour Party is unelectable under the present leadership and are keen to ensure no new leader is put in place before the next election. And ministers have read the unredacted version of Yellowhammer. They know how serious the problems will be for the people of this country after a no-deal Brexit. And they wish to have the election out of the way before the reality of the mess that lies ahead becomes apparent. Let me put it to you another way. If the government was truly confident in the aftermath of their Brexit policy, then they would wait for next spring. They would take credit for the success of Brexit, rejoice, even perhaps gloat, that all fears about it were unfounded, and propose a few popular one-nation policies to restore the fortunes of the Conservative Party. But they don't. Instead, to reinforce their electoral appeal, the government seems intent on whipping up dissent by using emotional and evocative language that can only provoke fear and anger and fuel grievances against Parliament and the law. Consider what this means. It means this government wishes to win re-election by inciting opposition to the most important bulwarks of our state and its freedoms. Their approach is profoundly unconservative, and whatever its short-term effect, will do permanent damage to the reputation of the party I have served for the whole of my life. I cannot believe that any previous government in all our long history would have even considered such reckless and divisive behaviour. We were promised during the referendum campaign that Brexit would, and I quote, restore parliamentary sovereignty and the supremacy of UK law. For that reason, I am assuming there will be no further political trickery from the government. I referred earlier to the contradiction between the Act prohibiting the UK leaving the European Union without a deal and the Prime Minister's continued assertion that come what may, we will leave on the 31st of October. My fear is that the government will seek to bypass statute law by passing an order of council, not an order in council, but an order of council to suspend the Act until after the 31st of October. And it is important to note that an order of council can be passed by Privy Councillors, that is, government ministers, without involving Her Majesty the Queen. I should warn the Prime Minister that if this route is taken, it will be a flagrant defiance of Parliament and utterly disrespectful to the Supreme Court. It would be a piece of political chicanery that no one should ever forgive or forget. Like many in my party who have been expelled for voting with their conscience, I am a lifelong Conservative. And I hope our millions of traditional, moderate, middle-of-the-road supporters understand that this Conservative government's present position is an aberration. Most Conservative supporters are not a Brexit party tribute band, nor have we abandoned our core values, which are to find compromise, seek allies, and strive for unity rather than create division and disarray. We do not believe we have a right to ignore the voices of millions of others whose opinions may differ from our own. And we abhor the language of division and hate, and words such as saboteur, traitor, enemy, surrender, betrayal, which should have no place in our party, no place in our political discourse, nor in our politics, and nor, for that matter, in our wider society. It is emphatically not who we are as a people, and must never be seen as so. I hope that the Conservative Parliamentary Party will regain its sense of balance and rein in the faction of a faction that now prevails in Cabinet. Now that Parliament is sitting again, it has the opportunity to prove its quality, its strength, its purpose, and its power. I hope that every member of Parliament, from each and every party, will unite and rise to that challenge. Only then can we, the United Kingdom and the European Union, forge a new beginning and a new future, with hope and prosperity and in friendship together. Thank you very much.